All right, hello. This is Jeff Sigler, and I'd like to welcome everyone to today's webinar brought to you as a member benefit of Heritage Ohio. Heritage Ohio's mission is to help people save places that matter, build community, and live better. So we're very glad to have you here today for our presentation, the Mayor's Role in Revitalization. We'll be taking questions at the end of the presentation, so if you have any questions, please type it into the chat box that you'll find over in your GoToWebinar software on the side of your screen. If you have any problems with the webinar software, please, most problems can be solved by just closing the program and restarting it, and that solves 99% of your problems. This webinar has been approved for AIA credits, so please email Pearl as indicated coming up here on the screen. So yeah, this webinar is approved for all AIA credits, as you can read here. This is the learning. These are the learning objectives today for the webinar, and if you would like to receive those credits, you can email Pearl at this email address. So now I would like to introduce our presenter for today, Mayor Jeff Hall of Newark, Ohio. Mayor Hall became the 68th mayor of Newark on January 1st, 2012. Mayor Hall is an honors graduate from Newark High School, holds a minor degree in information technology, and a bachelor's degree in accounting and a master's degree in accounting from Ohio State University. Prior to serving as mayor, Jeff was the Newark City Treasurer, and Mayor Hall is an active volunteer throughout the community and attends many events during the year to stay in touch with the citizens. So thank you very much, Mayor, for taking part today, and I will turn it over to you.
Great, happy to be here. Good afternoon, everybody, and certainly it's kind of the Jeff and Jeff show, I guess, here, a little bit. So I was elected mayor on January 1st of 2012, and I think most of what you'll see here, we're going to go through some quick slides of some things we've got going in Newark and what we've done in kind of what we consider somewhat a relatively short period of time. We've called it Re-Newark, revitalization of a city, and certainly we expect Central Ohio to grow. That's one of those demographics that we're focused around. Insight 2050 is a plan through MORPC out of Columbus. Growth in population, jobs, growth on both ends of the age spectrum, of the younger group, the older group. So we're using some of those stats as we grow and as we develop in the area. So we got a community that is ready to accept that growth. A lot of this comes from our Newark Development Partners, which is our local community improvement corporation, again, that was set up in 2012. And put a director in 2013, and we've been rolling very strong since then. I truly believe that is the economic development arm and leg that needs to be used as you grow. Millennial attraction, I'm not going to kind of go through all this data so much, but we want to make downtown a destination. We believe it's a good walkable neighborhood atmosphere, and we need to make it even stronger as we move ahead. So we stay on all those good walkable, attracting area type amenities that as we grow. This is an exit as you get off Route 16. That bridge is not there. It'll look at a variation of that, but surely we want a nice welcome as we get into the city. And the building off to the right there as you get off the ramp too is not there, but we got a local developer that would like to make that. So, welcome to downtown Newark. This is a rendition. We're in a revitalization process downtown using CSO project dollars, not general fund dollars, so it's kind of water, wastewater dollars to separate a combined sewer overflow system. Those dollars we'll be digging up downtown, and when we put it back, this is what we want it to look like. And we solicited heavily, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, the local investors, business owners, downtown building owners, as what they want it to look like, and then we built best practices in that certainly as we went ahead. So it's an old, we're great. We got this courthouse in the center of the square. It's a beautiful attractor, and then building out around that. It surely is our belief that while I don't always agree that government creates jobs, I think we create an atmosphere to welcome businesses who in turn need to welcome customers. So we kind of keep that in that unilateral line that way a little bit, and really look at the way that works. So we want to capture the ambiance and the old kind of historic values of downtown, but you bring in a new couple zingers. If you look on the corners there, there's what's called technically roundabouts. We kind of like to call them optimized intersections, but that's kind of get that traffic moving well. We have a lot of traffic downtown. And so building a little bit of the new into the old to make it an attractive area. Newark is more than old, has typical older downtown, we're fairly full on the first floor level. Not all the exact kind of businesses that will induce walkability and get people downtown. And then second and third floors are on a more vacancy status, but we're in a hurry to change that through some unique uses along with residential lofts. This is Newark downtown. We surely, from where I sit, we got to know where we've been before we know where we're headed, and that was real important as we worked at that. When I came in as mayor, I could appoint 5 people. 4 of them were directors, and it was important to me that they had Newark, Ohio addresses and knew the history of Newark. Move forward, because we do this in a collaborative decision-making process. So we have a Midland Theater downtown that was totally renovated. This was a picture of them in 1947, and you surely see the downtown was flourishing and very busy. And we obviously know you can't replicate it exactly. It isn't going to be the exact model, but what we don't want is just a bunch of offices and probably storefronts that aren't necessarily attractors for foot traffic downtown. This would be the north side of the square. We're expecting this. We're going to start digging in a couple months here, and we expect this finished product in about probably 2 years from now is the time frame. So it's going to have good walkable crosswalks, very delineated, so it's a very safe environment. Those are inputs we got from the local building owners and also the business owners. They want a more safe downtown. The interesting side note on that I think we all thought it was safe because we are around it all the time and we're down there. But it's my job to kind of reach out and ask the outside sector or those that are visitors to our area, what do you think of downtown, and see what their image is, because those are the ones we truly want to attract to, along with our local people. And most of them said it was confusing and a little bit unsafe pedestrian. So that's a big part that we use to work this formula out. We're also got the local foundations on board. There'll be a Canal Market Plaza district. Most of these amenities that you're seeing in this picture of building structures are already there. There's an old 1800s historic jail in that piece, but there is a Canal Market Plaza about 2/3 up the picture there that will be built, and that's all funded through the foundation. So we're going to work hard on that for a food aggregation center, this real strong, real food, real local good food efforts, and Licking County is a good area for that. So this is the Canal Market Plaza. This will be just about a block, half a block off of downtown, so it's important that'll be a big attractor as we go that way. Kind of clicking through these pictures are some ideas to look at. We've taken the assets to the areas. We've got some new buildings in the areas. We've got Park National Bank with 450 employees downtown, so we want to be sure what we build is around that. We've got a hotel that has got a new label, a new flag, DoubleTree, that's important. So, and these are some of the lofts before and after progress that's happened just in the last 12 months. That's real important and going to be an important piece of this as it goes. It's important to get good market rate apartments in, so you have people with good spendable income to support those businesses on the first floor levels for the after 5 o'clock and on the weekends when we all have challenges to get people in downtown areas. I'm not going to go through these, but that's the benefits of upscale loft living, really. It attracts people that your younger generation don't want to cut grass on the weekends. I'll kind of simplify that. So we've got an old high school here that'll be 27 loft apartments, and we've got an old crystal ballroom here. These are both historic preservation tax credit projects that'll be working forward and make that work. We've also got ancillary, or I call spin-off projects that are happening because of those larger projects, which are not tax projects, but it's a good downtown retail area, and other amenities we're looking at as we grow. I'm going to talk about the really strong, to take a SWOT analysis and really look at your strong assets you have in your area. And from our dynamics on the south side, we're building a new fire station downtown. We need that, and that's part of that incentive that way in many ways. So and kind of start this, really the Metropolitan Revolution is a book, and I think it's important. Cities and metros' capacity for action and innovation won't be measured solely by the fiscal health of the governments, but rather on the financial commitments and engagement of private, nonprofit, and civic institutions, their leaders. And we work strong with that on the public-private partnerships as we move in that direction. So I think it's real important. So I'll go ahead and push it over to Jeff, kind of give you that entree there, a little bit entree.
All right. Well, we're doing something a little different here in this webinar, and we are going to supplement the PowerPoint here with a bit of a question and answer. So, Mayor, really appreciate your kind of going through the explanation of sort of all your projects you've done, what's all happened, and we've loved working in Newark and with you and all the other folks, just because it's great to see a city that's made such great strides in a short time and really had such progress in terms of revitalization.
Thank you.
And so what we're hoping to get out of today is sort of a greater understanding of what you've done, how it's happened, how it's come together, and some of the decisions you made, and hope to see some other cities sort of come along. So
we love that. What's good for anyone in Ohio is good for us in many ways. We look at that. So
great. So the first thing I'd really like to know is, when you came in office, it seems like downtown revitalization was a priority for you. Why is that, and do you ever have any constituents sort of feel like you're placing more priority on downtown than maybe some other parts of the city, and kind of how do you answer that question?
Sure. I have some roots downtown. When I was 14 years old, my first job was downtown. And actually, on my family side, my father had a downtown shoe store, and of course, before I was born, my mother had 4 generations of a downtown bakery in the family. So we kind of had a little passion there, but again, it isn't about me. It's about the city. To make it kind of economics, downtown's a commercial district. And while it's beautiful, it's not necessarily just a sightseeing district. So as we know, local communities across Ohio and across America are having challenges with lack of revenues declining, increasing expenses, et cetera. So I think it's important from a mayor's perspective and really from an administrator's perspective that we capitalize on our commercial areas to get the best bang for our buck. What I mean then, we build that downtown that welcomes businesses, businesses welcome customers, success off each other, sales taxes increase, and all the other taxes associated with that, instead of just simply doubling your income tax that I don't think is always a solution. So it is important that way as we move that way and increase those tax dollars. There's also a passion locally. This is something, and we're surely not unique to that, but I think many downtowns have challenges growing. Most cities would love to have a vibrant downtown, but they're just not sure which way to go with that. Your downtown business owners, at least our area, and again, we're not unique to it, have wanted this for maybe 30 years. So we're surely not going to do something that is against the grain downtown here, I think, and we're solicited a lot of input before we made those decisions. I kind of joke with people, there's challenges, it's change, and everybody's resistant to that. But quite honest, I say, we didn't just draw this pretty picture in my office and say, let's go do it. So solicited a lot of input, and this is what's wanted in the community.
Well, that's great. We've long been trying to make the case that, it's economic development kind of thing on its head, and it's once you attract good people, you actually attract, the types of jobs you want.
Sure.
And not necessarily, well, let's attract those jobs and hope good people show up.
Right.
Which is really backwards how things have been thought about. But, again, we appreciate seeing Newark make that choice. And as the downtown becomes more vibrant, you're going to attract a type of people that I think will attract, more jobs, more prosperity. So
that's exactly. I use our return on investment down here is feet on the streets, and that's really, more people we can get downtown walking. That's a great thing.
That's great. That's great. Be interested as far as when you came into office, what kind of groundwork did you have to lay to sort of ramp up to get things going?
Sure. I think, of course, a mayor's role, I consider myself what you want to call the top ambassador in the city. I've used some little phrases I've used. Sometimes I consider I'm putting together a big puzzle in Newark and all the pieces have to fit. But there's got to be credibility in your local government, too, and that's something we work strong with. Credibility on Monday nights at council, in this case, credibility out in the community. That doesn't mean 100% of the people are always going to believe in what you do, but number one, that you have a large majority that really has trust in you. This is sales in some respect. I mean, you buy the salesperson and you buy the product that comes with it. Now, we're not coming up with a product off the wall. We're coming up with an idea that they want, but sometimes you need to sit there and communicate and explain a little bit the details, and somebody that's kind of shaking their head sideways starts getting that vertical nod going, and we kind of like that. We also, literally, I have a business background, as you kind of said at the entry, so we have a SWOT analysis that we look at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in the area. So what are our assets? What are we good at? What makes Newark unique? And surely we believe we're more than 200 years old. It's our historic buildings that are just outstanding that all communities don't have, and they're in pretty darn good shape overall. We don't have a lot of vacant properties that way. So, and then you just kind of combine what are your weaknesses to strengthen, obviously, and then opportunities, maybe people in the community, leaders, foundations, funds, et cetera, that way. And then it's important to build a good council relationship. That's important because a lot of times many mayors will know, and government employees will understand you have to have that on Monday nights at council sometimes. So, and then develop a good plan for the community and stick to that plan in many ways. Adjust it as needed, but make it a good plan.
Excellent, excellent. You mentioned the partnerships in the community, and I think that that's something that, more than anything, I guess, when I meet with the community that has been successful at revitalization, their spirit of collaboration really shines through, and I've heard you mention that, and other folks in the community have mentioned kind of collaboration, and is that something that you sort of, how has your administration sort of fostered that collaborative spirit?
Well, that's needed. Maybe I'd be real hard to hone down on maybe one thing that is the priority in this entire thing, or the one thing to take away. It's the public-private partnerships. I mean, there's just no way you can do what you're doing. And you know, it's funny, there is kind of more money out there sometimes than you imagine sometimes, but there's not the belief that there's a unison effort or a collateral effort to go together and make it move in the right direction. We always have that challenge that we're elected officials, at least mayors, and sometimes city administrators, you may not be here so many years from now. So you have to kind of build that long-term plan in that it's going to keep rolling before the private sector is going to come up with the big dollars many ways. When I came in, we set up a community improvement corporation. So Ohio Revised Code Chapter 1724 covers that thoroughly. And what is great about that, that's an economic development arm. 2/5 of the board are appointed by the public sector, 3/5 by the private sector, which in our case we're in partnerships with the local chamber. And so we have a 10-member board, and we have some real great leaders that have had visions for downtown for many years as we get that going. I think it's crucial sometimes that board has to have those early drivers. A few years down the road, to get a little more established, a different type of board member might be fine, but those early ones have to be the go-getters, and you really got to, the busy people that will carve it out into their day anyway. And then, of course, reaching out in the community and building those relations with the foundations, et cetera.
Great, great. Yeah, we've certainly seen that. It's just sort of one of those things that's hard to put your finger on, but I haven't seen a community that's been really successful that hasn't sort of embraced that collaborative spirit, and certainly Newark is the same. Be interested to know, as you've gone through this process the last few years, have any major roadblocks or challenges that you've run into? What's kind of been some of the harder parts of getting the ball rolling? Sure,
and I'm going to knock on wood here, but because it's worked pretty good, and I can't emphasize communication. And surely, if any time once we go, well, we should communicate it that. I mean, yeah, I really truly believe you can't over-communicate, and that's just sharing the word. I do more than 1,500 meetings a year. I'm very busy. I'm out in the community day and night. I don't sit in my office. I know what my office looks like. I have meetings out in the community, and that's important, and that's where I do listen to people. You can have special interest groups. You can have little seminars. You can have all kinds of boards meet, but they kind of have more of a very focused, or even, I'll use the word bias sometimes, opinion. I'm out, and if you got an idea, let me know. I'll be at a basketball game. I'll be at anything, and say, hey, what about this? Or I'll give you this one idea, and I welcome that, because it's ways we can fix it. But it builds that good, unbiased opinion of the direction we should have. And many times I converse back and explain some things so that they understand it completely. Timing and coordination is always challenging, but we had this separation project rolling, and the streetscape and the traffic studies kind of grew larger than what we thought, so we had a deadline to reach. So that was a little bit, but I don't know that you can plan a whole lot on that. Many times I've used the phrase that I think government runs at about 100 miles an hour. I think the private sector runs at 300 miles an hour. So that collaboration, we got to run at about 200 miles an hour. 300 is a little quick for government, 100 is a little slow, so we need to run in some medium there. So it's important for me to kind of push it and pick up the pace a little bit.
Great, great. On the opposite end of that, so you've gone through this process of you. Had any major wins or any sort of surprises, things that came together that you weren't expecting, or things that turned out sort of surprisingly well?
Well, and those are the great things, because they'll come out of nowhere. It's amazing when you kind of get the ball rolling and get the optimism there, and the glass is always half full, and fix those problems and reach out. It's amazing who'll come out of the woodwork with ideas, with funding. Certainly we've had that from our local foundations. We have 2 primary local foundations. One has nurtured and taken over control of a Lewis Sullivan building, which is only one of 8 in the country, that I could ask many Newarkites as they drive around, wouldn't even know that building's there. but they're going to put in probably all told $2 million to renovate that back to its original status. And then another foundation, really, T.J. Evans Foundation, is building about a $4 million Canal Market Pavilion a block long and funding that completely. So that is two great big wins we've had. We've had multiples in many ways. We have a great relationship with Denison University that doesn't sit within the city limits, but Newark and Heath and Granville all kind of close to sharing borders, and we do it that way. So they're really integrating, and they want to come east of Newark instead of west, maybe to the suburbs of Columbus, with professors and students, and we reach out quite a bit and work with them in many ways. So, and then the service groups are stepping up on, obviously a smaller financial scale, but we nice downtown fountain. It was about a $45,000 granite fountain project, and $2,000 and $3,000 here and there was great. So we've had a lot of good wins we're real proud of.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing, and I've sort of seen it come up recently that a lot of communities say, oh, well, I wish we'd get this influx of cash, and then that'd be nice to have somebody. And like you said earlier, there's money in the community, and I find that almost every community has money, and certain projects take a little bit of patient capital or altruistic capital, but that money doesn't step forward until you get the ball rolling.
Well, and that's a great statement, and I think you're exactly right. It isn't give me the money and let's figure out what to do with it. It's the other way around. So I've talked with my team, and that's a strong word around here. Our team knows I've done those T-shirts. We have Fridays, we wear them, the employees, and you're only as good as your employees. But really, there's a plan for Newark from soliciting input and doing good practical analysis and good research, and then try to stick to that plan. And sometimes I'll tell people, don't worry about the money piece. Sometimes you say, oh, we're not going to do that because we'll never get that money. Don't worry about that piece now. So build the plan, what your city needs, map it out, and then you'd be amazing where money comes from. And at the worst case, it might take twice as long to do it. You might have to stage it out a little bit, whether you're building, in our case, a new fire station or some other things going on, but it still is a viable product. There might be a few you have to abandon, you can massage along the way, but sometimes they use that financial constraint as a limiter. You don't think outside the box enough.
Interesting. So, people always separate the ideas of community development and economic development, and I think in our particular field in revitalization, I think they go hand in hand. That as the community grows stronger, that it becomes sort of a better place to live and people are attracted. And along those lines of thinking, I'd be interested to know, as you've gone through this process, have you noticed any changes in the community? Have you sort of the softer side of what you do? Have you felt a stronger sense of community by chance or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. And, naturally, I'm kind of the lead person. I'm the one out in the community, and I'm getting some nice kudos. And, as I kind of say with them, it's not about me, it's about us, and you're thanking the team when you say this. But it does tell us we're going in the right direction. So one thing I don't do is hide, as I say, I'll take both. I mean, we take criticism. That's what it's about in many ways, but I've seen a little better bonding out in the community, I think, people networking together, because again, that's how we're achieving successes. We'll bring a couple different, as I say, service groups or members on foundations together, and they've never sat across the table from each other, so there's a relationship building there, and that gets into some brainstorming in a whole different area. And then when we find out they're doing collaborative projects that really aren't city-driven, that's great to see that this has kind of nurtured that and started that. It builds pride back into the community in a lot of ways, and that's kind of unleashed really a lot of great ideas and gets it going. So we see excitement, and we see a lot of good things around the community.
That's great. This question's I can't expect you to answer for other mayors and other cities, but we see a lot of cities never really ramp up to kind of get where Newark goes. And any thoughts on why some cities might not take the same sort of steps?
Yeah, there's a lot of challenges out there, and I'm not surely going to at all say today this is easy. Mm-hmm. And without blood and sweat in many ways, and hard work from everyone involved, and including all the citizens in many ways, if nothing else, them understanding it. I can, with a financial background, and the treasurer's job in the city was open, never thought that I was going to go, be an elected official. And somebody said, what about it? We'll think about it. So then I became treasurer, made some good changes within the department. And somebody said, what about being mayor? Never thought about it. Even that's just a short, probably 5 years ago. So truly, it's not about me at all. And it's really about the community in many ways. There's a variety of elected officials out there. And of course, many people know I shoot from the hip, and I just tell it the way it is. Some work harder than others. And, this is not an easy job in many ways. We have great people in this area. that really step up. And we have out-of-towners that come in that notice that in some of their communities. So that's a limiter that a local city or government may not always have. When I talk about foundations and I talk about things, that's not everywhere. So you kind of can trim this down a little bit, but there's something you can do to make your community better. And I mean, there's many ways you can do things, and you do have to look for dollars. There's tax incentive dollars available to rehabilitate older buildings and do revitalization. So, that is a good stipend and a good help in many ways. And again, you got to put enough time in. By far, I have a family that surely understands when I'm not home most nights of the week and I'm out seeing things. And then I think really in this business, short-term planning is kind of prevails many times because many people are short-term and they have so many appointees that go with them. So would we think 5, 10, 15 years out, if not longer, some of that comes from this is my hometown. Yeah. Some of it just comes from that's the right way to do business.
Leads me to a little bit of a follow-up question. You mentioned programs. Have you found any particular programs that have been very helpful to you, be it anything you've tapped into or used that's been a big help here?
Sure, and I talked a little bit, Higher Revised Code 1724 with the CIC. I think that's just critical. I've said many times, I think government is great at many things. We're not good at others, and I think we're not good at development, running businesses, sales. Really, I don't expect my employees that are working with taxpayers' dollars. I don't want to get too creative. Yeah. So this is a great marriage in many ways. Needless to say, what we're sitting here talking about, Heritage Ohio, I mean, that's been a win-win for us in many ways. We've brought in some experts about historic preservation and renovation, revitalization. That's kind of somewhere this all started was in a boardroom of a bank, having a couple different sessions, bringing in some very professional architects. Stanbeck Architects up in Cleveland's one of them. Steve Kuhn up in Canton, and they've done many of these. This is what they do, so they have that really insight into it. I've told many people it's kind of in the wow factor, and the ooh factor, and all those different things. I've been in these buildings, and you see them crumbling, and I kind of go ooh, and this was years ago, because I changed now. And they look at them and go, ooh. And I'm like, what's in that ooh? And, well, they see. They know what the potential can be with the buildings. But it was educating our local building owners and our local developers to the potentials. Do understand that all this work we're doing creates a lot of jobs in this area, too. Some short-term, some long-term. But the community welcomes that in many ways, especially when the housing industry has been thrown down quite a bit in recent years. So. There's no limits. I really said we knew many of the answers we're going to get were going to be beyond the city limits. Mm-hmm. So I'll take teams and I go to different areas. And before we built our downtown fire station, we went around in different communities and took a team and looked at them and talked, what would you do again, what wouldn't you do? The same way with renovations. We've been up in the Worcester area, of course, and we've been in the Marion area and some different areas where they have downtown loft apartments. And those people will help you, as we will. Give us a call, and we'll share the love a little bit. And it's amazing how many resources you have out there. But Heritage Ohio is a great start for that because you guys really kind of a bank of all that knowledge in many ways, or at least point you in the right direction.
Well, thank you. I wasn't setting you up just to.
No, I don't. And I didn't get paid for this endorsement. But yeah.
Well, that's great. That's great. I really appreciate that. But there is a lot, and something else you said really rang true that. Downtown is a community, it's the people in the downtown that's the greatest asset. And I think about real estate downtown, it's the equivalent of being on an ocean or a river or, a golf course. It's a great asset. And too few communities, I think, realize that this is, one of your best assets, your best real estate, and it really should be treated as such.
Yeah, it's a great area, too, to nurture family businesses, startups, to try different things. It's unique. It becomes an atmosphere of itself. I had a story the other day. Our long-term goal would be to set up probably a SID for downtown maintenance and snow removal, but one person told me they shoveled their front sidewalk and they shoveled their neighbors at the same time in the business next door. So nice gestures that way, and they create camaraderie in down there.
You need that. You do need just like it's in the neighborhood, downtown business owners and property owners, you want to start to come together and feel like they're in it together.
Mm-hmm. And you'll find how many people love that. There's people that just love it. We're not looking to move 10,000 people downtown. And it's just people just love the uniquenesses of these buildings and how creative they can become with them.
That's right. I have a couple more questions, but I wanted to mention to the audience that if you all have questions for Mayor Hall, please go ahead and type those in, and we're done with this. We'll answer some audience questions, so please go ahead and put those in now. So throughout this process, have there been any anything you've learned, any great sites that you've gleaned as you've gone through this?
Well, you got to get the ball rolling somehow. I kind of go back to that SWOT analysis, and it sounds kind of formal and technical, but no matter how you look at it, there's no sense. It isn't our idea, and it has to be the community's idea with best practices and what's available out there, funding a little bit. So it's real important. I talked about sticking a barometer in the community. You kind of really got to get out and talk to some community leaders. Certainly, some people will be in offices they didn't necessarily hadn't lived in the town for the last 30, 40 years. It'd be amazing the different ventures that have been tried in the past but never succeeded. So you might be amazed at how further ahead concepts are. They just have to be modulated a little bit for today's economics and today's environment a little bit ways, but it'd be amazing how many ideas. I think if you have a downtown that has some decent businesses, they want more businesses. I mean, they're all going to be, it's a great place to start. And so you really got to build a good plan that's believable, maybe ramp it up just a notch above what people think is the potential, and then really orchestrate and work it well. We have regular meetings. When I certainly have a meeting, I will reach out. Of course, you might have your key 2 or 3 people, but who else needs to be at this table? And don't second guess, just ask them. Hey, this is what's going on, and we do that from employee standpoint, appointed standpoint, and surely from the citizens. And somebody might say, yeah, I'd like to be there because da-da-da, and I never thought of that. So, and that's where it comes, and then it's good to have some neutral people out there to give you that out-of-the-box thought. When I came in as treasurer, and I think it's important that people understand, as mayor, I'm the only mayor in this town. So if I'm not doing what a mayor does, no one's doing that. And that's critical in many ways. So you have to delegate. You have to build a great team that you can count on, depend on. They need to hear from the team members what they're hearing from me and understand it. It can be said a couple different ways, but with the same goals on mind, so it creates that team fashion. But I really kind of like to visualize myself outside looking in the window and say, why do we do that? And why do we do this? And because I hate the phrase we've done it that way because we've always done it that way. Yeah. So, and that's really tough. So.
Well, speaking of that, is there anything that as you've gone through this you might do different?
Well, timing's always tough. One concern of towns maybe our age, as I say, we're more than 200 years old, property maintenance is a challenge. We have that in the residential neighborhoods. We have it in some of the commercial areas. We were fortunate to have some laws on the books, some legislation to our advantage. But you look at that stuff. Many cities do not. We made use of Attorney General Mike DeWine's Moving Ohio Forward grant, or kind of known as the Demo Grant. We administered it for this county. So we tore down the first house in the state using that plan. Because when I came in, when I talked about that vision, how long is the list for tear downs? 20. I said, could it be 50? Well, sure, make it 50. And I had no idea there was funding out there. It wasn't announced yet. So when it got announced, it was kind of a godsend, really, that it dropped in on you. So, you're going to have some regulations in there. We set up a certified local government, a CLG local board, that you have a little bit of direction downtown. These buildings have lasted 100 years. They're not going to last another 100 years with a little good atmosphere, meaning heating and air conditioning or cooling to keep them dried out in the upper floors. So it's critical that you have some legislation on the books. That's where you go back to bonding with the council, making them understand that it's economic growth in a lot of directions.
I really appreciate you saying that. I couldn't agree more. There's so many cities that we work with that aren't willing to have some standards about how things look, and I've never seen a community or any institution improve without raising their standards, and so that is great to hear. It affects the community's pride if you just let everything sort of deteriorate to that level.
You are going to find in this business, and I tell our team a lot of times, somebody that's very upset in this public sector might holler at you, and it might sound like 5 people hollering, but it is 1. Now, we don't discount what they say, but if all you're trying to do is make everyone happy, you're going to make no one happy. So it is important to stay focused. Now, understand maybe the 75, 80, 90% that says, yeah, you're doing a great thing, they're not necessarily going to call you up and tell you that. So it is important to reach out and pull that little informal survey yourself and look at it. The main people that do walk through City Hall doors are complainers a lot of times. So don't base your judgments and your plans just on that.
That's also very good advice. It's the content people don't call your office screaming.
Yeah.
You've mentioned something earlier that I find incredibly true as well, is that it's not government's place to necessarily start new businesses, but you're creating a setting. You showed the rendering of downtown, and I just find that to be so true, that you have to create the setting for all this to take place, and we see a lot of cities that don't necessarily take that stance. And along those lines or others, is there other advice that you might give to other city leaders that are interested in kind of taking this approach?
Yeah, public-private partnership is challenging. The private sector wants to get something out of it. I mean, they're in private business. I'm not saying they want big bottom line. They don't, and the public sector's always, well, don't, put us out liable there, and they're very careful. So you want to balance that just right and feel that out. Why I stay busy and why I go to many things, because I want to know kind of everything that's going on, and how does this fit into that? And I might be sitting and talking to one. I was just in a meeting last week, and they thought about this, so I'm marrying 2 outside parties there as they move forward. We have of course, a park system. One of them has a swimming pool. One has 4 baseball diamonds that are outstanding. In fact, we had about 350 games on those 4 diamonds last summer. There's an example. We shouldn't be running those. So I contracted with our local YMCA. They're in the pool business. They're in that kind of business. That's what they do. And we really worked contracts that give them an incentive to do something. It isn't a big liability on our side. It isn't out-of-pocket cost more than what it was. But it also isn't telling the Y, hey, you get this in great shape, we're going to take it over. Because what's the incentive for them to work forward? We also have a great ice skating rink, and we have a sports group over top of that. And we ask them to put in capital improvements to a certain dollar amount each year to maintain that facility. And they're just real happy. So you can't have your arms around it too tight to not let that private sector want to incentivize and kind of grow a little bit. That's their pride and ownership into it. They're not really, everybody's not making big dollars off that. They're doing it for the community. So, I think, you got to be careful in many ways, but building relationships, communicating, delegating. America, somebody said once, wasn't just built on critics, and they used an example going to the moon, I think. We had a recent talk here lately, and, many people were naysayers of that, and look, we accomplished it, and how much was accomplished by the people looking forward and looking into the future in many ways. So,
all right, with that, I'll turn to Pearl and see, do we have any questions? All right, let's get to those. All right, first, from Adam in Newark. Adam would be interested to know, can you repeat the Ohio Revised Code regarding your economic development group, the CIC? And then also, can you describe the Newark Economic Development Group in more detail, how it's organized, what's the makeup? So I think it's more about the CIC.
Sure, yeah. The CIC, Community Improvement Corporation, is guided under Ohio Revised Code, Chapter 1724. You can Google that literally. Ohio CIC, Ohio Community Improvement Corporation, ORC 1724, however you want to get there. And it's going to tell you in detail what allows that. It is, it's a kind of a partnership between a public entity and a private entity. The public entity is the City of Newark. In our case, the private entity is the Chamber of Commerce. They also have that at the county level too, which was about a year ahead of us, gave us some ideas there. A lot of times that happens when an economic development director is retiring and you're trying to fill a void and go a different direction. Maybe there's cost savings to that. So we sit there and you build that partnership. It's a 501c3. It has a board. Again, 2/5 of the board are on the public and on our side. 3/5 of the board are appointed by the private entity, which is the Chamber of Commerce, and it's made up of a variety of leaders. They meet, and then, of course, appointed chairman, a vice chairman, secretary, and treasurer. Right now, our chairman is Dan DeLauder, who's chairman of CEO of Park National Bank Corporation, and really has a large interest in downtown with headquarters for PNB. They meet on a regular basis and get kind of creative and economic development ideas, and we talk and see what we can do.
Can you give me an example of something that the CIC has done that you wouldn't have been able to do? Like, what's something they've taken on that you couldn't have done maybe through the city's economic development department?
Yeah, well, most of this, I'll be honest with you, because there's a focus on it. The CIC also has hired an executive director, so that is the focus of moving the Newark forward in that direction. Within the city, all cities, again, have increasing expenses, declining revenues. What do they cut out? And what do they do in the recent years to try to make up for that? Sometimes there's less focus on economic development. This city went in and took economic development department that was on the general fund, merged it with the community development department, so it was on grant money. But really, if you think about community development is grant driven, so a grant's going to tell you what you do. It kind of has guidelines. Economic development, you have to be creative. You got to go out and make phone calls. You got to meet people and talk. So it's a lot easier to kind of do those grant default things. So I think economic development gets left by its side. With the CIC, that's their job, and that's their focus. And you're also, the people setting the table, most of them are from the private sector, so they have the true input of what needs to be done in the area, and they solicit ideas. So.
Sure, wonderful. We've got a question from Donna in Cambridge. Donna asks, you touched on it briefly, but can you elaborate on the topic of backlash from the community of being so downtown focused? We have a great mayor, very supportive of our Main Street program. Maybe doesn't quite have the same level of passion for or focus on the downtown as maybe some of the other parts of our city.
Yeah, you know, it's been interesting. We created, again, I'll go back to, we have to do a sewer separation project. We have certain mandates that we have to hit, percentages of achievement throughout the city. I'm not going to get into details, kind of technical, but we do that throughout the city. A lot of cities are doing that at our age. Many people don't know they're doing that, but we have 225 miles of centerline streets and, of course, a line underground, essentially. So we have to replace so much of that a year. We look at what's deteriorating. That's where we separate it. So stormwater, ultimately, at the end of this plan, most of it will go to the river, and most wastewater will go to the water treatment plant. So those are the dollars, and there's creative dollars. That's EPA driven, so they're going to give you some incentives and some creative dollars to achieve that. So a lot of our naysayers hadn't necessarily been from the financial side. Now, we've had to raise water rates slightly to keep up with rising expenses, but we're still in the bottom 25 percentile in rates in the state of Ohio, so at least 75 out of 100 people pay more for water than in the city of Newark. So it's important we stay within those guidelines, but most of it has been in the change. We're taking downtown traffic that's one way, change it two-way. So there's a downtown feel that people are very comfortable with, so it's part of that change, and most of the naysayers have been in that. But I Googled long after we were into this process, downtown renovation, two-way traffic, and it's amazing a few of the cities that have done it across America, sales and businesses went up 50%. I mean, there's a whole lot of things that happen as a result of that, and you can't believe it. So most of it's just been kind of the logistics of it is where people, and then you have some people who are just very set in their ways, don't want to change. So, you know, and I get that and understand that, but it's our job to try to explain it to them. We've won some over. We haven't won them all over, but we invite them through public meetings, and that was through the decision process, to come in and question us.
That's interesting. Yeah, particularly, you know, the two-way traffic versus one-way. It's similar to so many other things. I mean, you hear one thing for decades and you start to believe it, and come to find out that thinking is proven wrong so many times. And yeah. So, yeah, it really does take somebody to come in and look at things a bit anew.
I try to put something in an example that people can understand. I think sometimes they think we're immune to rising costs. And I say, think about that grocery cart full of food you bought the other day, how much more it cost than 20 years ago. Or, you know, maybe you used to buy a new car every 5 years, and now you buy a pre-owned car every 7 or 8. Or, you know, so we're not immune to that. We're exposed to the same rising costs in a community. There's also these dollars can't be used to pave the streets. So, and that's a big misnomer in the community. I say, we could stop this whole project a year ago, but we couldn't have paved another mile of street out because it's a different dollar. Financial integrity, we're teaching government finance a little bit. I'm teaching it big to the employees so they can make decisions how to cost contain their departments. But in the public, we're trying to explain that. It isn't just one checkbook to write out of. We have special purpose funds that have to be used accordingly. So you can look kind of flush in one account and look dry in another. So it's the balancing of that.
Any other? All right. Looks like we don't have any more audience questions. So another one for you that's maybe a bit of a wrap-up. Oh, maybe we do have a question. Somebody was interested to know how many residential units you have downtown, and if those are all market rate, or if there's maybe if there's been any intentional work on the part of the city or the CIC in trying to foster more residential units.
Absolutely, and let me step back just a minute with a picture of Newark just briefly. 2010 census, we were the 20th largest city in Ohio. Now, I'm a numbers geek, being an accountant background, so with speculating the projected population for 2013, we were going to be at number 18. Now, that amazes most people that live in this community because we have a small town feel, and they go, Really? So if you take out the big cities in Ohio, we approach the top 10. That's an important piece of that. Downtown, when we built in those numbers, that the upper floors are really best for lofts. They were boarding rooms. They were hotels 50, 60, 80, 100 years ago. And, you know, there's some building codes that you have to work with, and you have to look at prior use and many things that way to make that work. So we had good conversations, local building code. That's another scene you have to stitch into the whole thing with fire safety in many ways. We just opened on Friday. We have a local photography studio, Argyle Photography. I would say she loves downtown. Probably just a couple of years ago, short years ago, she had no idea what she'd be into today. And she sat in on one of our seminars with the experts, again, how to renovate and how to apply for those tax incentives and tax credits. And it's done. And she opened it up. So she's got 4 units up there, and it's on the second and third floor total. The top floor at the end of the day is a 3-bedroom unit. And she's already got 2 of them rented. I mean, just right away. The top unit's $1,200 a month. Huh? It's a president of a local bank here, and he actually was there. She had a brief opening on Friday for a walkthrough for everyone before he occupied it. He was there signing the contract, and I've never seen so much enthusiasm, and I really appreciate that in many ways. He said, anything you need, he said to me, if you want to show this unit and do it. The one thing people have to understand, when you get up in these units on the second and third floor and look out, the view is phenomenal. You don't see that from the sidewalk looking up. So it's critical to look at that. And also, because of the uniquenesses of the buildings, you have to get creative how you lay these apartments out. No two are alike. The CIC did a study that with plenty of comfort zone, we could have 50 units in the downtown area from the demographic study. And, you know, it's anywhere in 50 to 100, really, at the end of the day. We have on the books about 50 going here in the next probably year. So that's a great number. Worcester, I think the number was 70. Again, you're not looking to move 5,000 to 10,000 people downtown, but that's enough to really make that damn successful, those businesses. I had a business owner, a prospective business owner, a year ago looked at me, why is it going to work this time? Well, because we're going to move people downtown. That's your after 5 and your weekend crowd. It's important that you put in first floor businesses that the loft residents want to visit too. It's critical that you have that network. Not just any business works. So you create an atmosphere and truly a downtown mecca kind of a little area that everyone loves. People don't mind commuting farther to work today, but when they get home, they don't want to get in the car. Right. So they love to walk to and have a glass of wine or walk and buy a pair of shoes, etc.
That's the best view in the city, too.
That's exactly right. Our downtown courthouse decorates for the holidays phenomenally through a private group and private donations, and there's some beautiful views out the walls of those apartments.
Being a big believer that, yeah, the amount of residential has a huge impact on the retail and the feeling of vibrancy and safety downtown. But, you know, what has been sort of the city's role in terms of trying to get more property owners to make that leap? Has it been more of a change in the building department and code enforcement, or how have you tried to bring those property owners along to get them to make that investment?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of all those things. You had people that needed some direction at funding those tax credits on the larger projects. We have one just about a block over here. It's about a $5 million project. It was all out of pocket. It wouldn't happen from the private sector. So you can get 20 and 25% credits from the federal and state, and that makes that a doable project. Now, yes, you've got to follow those guidelines to rehab that building close to original in many ways, but that's the uniqueness and the beauty of it. If we don't address these buildings, they're going to deteriorate. You're going to tear them down. You have parking lots there another 50 years from now. And Jeff, you talked about safety a little bit. That's very true. There's nothing safer than an occupied building. And we look at that quite a bit. So from our safety perspective, that's kudos and thumbs up from our safety department and many people. It's educating, I think, the building owners in many ways. When they see something going, they maybe want to be a part of it. You might work, hey, you know, ask them a favor. You know, hey, would you paint this wall on the outside here? It's looking a little ugly, and be a part of it. Most people want to be a part of success, and there's different levels of that. So we've used a lot of different avenues.
Good. Yeah, we often see as sort of the building department not being knowledgeable enough maybe on some of these issues is really stymieing some of the potential investment. So
yeah, I believe it's Chapter 34 of the Ohio Building Code will give you some trade-offs that in buildings, but putting in sprinkler systems and some fire detection systems that will allow you to bypass some other pieces that way, and it's a number system, a scoring system that can work that way. So we definitely want a safe downtown, and we always look at it that way. There's a lot of old hardwood in those buildings, and you want to look at it properly, so you want to do it that way. But you can always reach out and try to solicit that information elsewhere. Truly, your local entity, your local building code, as you say, may not have that information. You need to educate them a little bit. Each property is unique, and each property owner is unique. So one size doesn't fit all. So we do reach out. It creates more work, but it's worth it. To really set and kind of, we have an inventory. I've been through practically every building in downtown, so we all have a good, well, you know what, we've got a couple down here, and make that marriage. I'm also, will tell people, I kind of give them a little bit of a pro forma. If they're thinking about buying a building, we'll get fire safety and we'll get building code down there and tell them what they can expect before they buy the building. We don't want them to buy the building and then all of a sudden find out they have to put, say, $100,000 unexpected dollars in there, because we want to win for them too. So we give them that customer service that's crucial, I believe, from the government perspective.
I have another question from Adam and Ben Wirt. Adam was interested to know if, what's the reaction been from some of the major employers? Have there been any sort of them questioning why downtown's a priority, or have they been on board?
You know, the CIC, it's critical that our Community Improvement Corporation is citywide. It's a citywide CIC, but it does have to have a geographic focus to start with, and that is crucial. You can't just say we're going to redo the whole city at one time, so you got to focus. When we were doing this sewer separation, we get our best bang for our buck because of the compact units downtown. So when we separate 100 feet of pipe, we're getting our best advantage, getting closer to a benchmark the EPA wants us to get to. There's one thing. Second of all, we know through business placement and locators across America, they're going to come in, and livability and likable communities are what employers want. We were talking about big box or bigger employers. They put training in their employees. The last thing they want is their employees unhappy where they live and they leave because they don't like the community. So we know they want a vibrant community, a good community. And we had a quick story. There were 3 people in finalists for location of a big box business. It wasn't us, but it was just a story from the outside. And so the finder put the CEO in the car. They drove around the 3 communities. One of them, they had a downtown area, and it was really falling apart. And he said, well, we're not coming here. It was that simple. I mean, just that one checked it off from the lack of curb appeal. So it takes a good community working together, including that downtown, to make it. Downtowns are challenging. I won't say they're not, but if you can achieve it and work hard, it really says something about your community.
Question was to you, is your building code official city code official county, or do you hire out to somebody else, contract, and what kind of relationship do you have with
the building code right now is in the county level. It was at the city level, and prior to me coming in as mayor, prior to administration several years back, in a cost containment feature, it moved to the county. So we work hard to keep those relationships going and set and meet, and that comes from my office, and we start that. I'll set the meetings up, and there's parties at the table. And yeah, it's easy when you're all in the same building and you just walk the floor and talk to somebody when building code's here, but it isn't. It hasn't been since the start of this project. So we have to work extra hard for those people. We kind of, it isn't technically contracting, but you kind of are working with them that way so that we're all on the same level. So in the same way we work with county, with the auditor and the treasurer, in a lot of different ways that people are delinquent on taxes, and we go from a lot of angles and try to complete that collaboration. And anytime you do that teamwork too, the citizens love that when county and city are working together.
That's great. That's great. Let's see if we have any other questions over there. When you're 200+ years old, what is original when looking at a building? So I guess it's...
Well, I think, you know, you'd be unique in some of these old structures. The bones of them, they've set vacant on the upper floors, so most of that is very original, and they hasn't been renovated. You're going to have facades, and you're going to have drop ceilings a lot of times on your primary floors for businesses. But you'd be amazed. We've opened up a lot of these drop ceilings that, of course, were popular in the 70s, and seen beautiful stamped tin ceilings that are still up there, and they were kept good because of those drop ceilings. So you'd be amazed. A lot of the windows, the size of the windows to let light in, because you know, light was quite a bit archaic 100 years ago, and so there's still a lot of original stuff in the building. Sometimes just covered up.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a big believer, jumping back one, just a big believer in what you say, though, is kind of the density. You know, an investment downtown, you've got 3 floors,
right?
You know, whether you're talking about moving pipe or whatever it is. I mean, you know, as I heard a good speaker put it, it's like, well, lake quarters all flatten the surface and stack them up, and you're going to get a lot more money out of the place where you stack them, in downtown is particularly.
Well, now, real quick, too, think about if you want that building sold, it's not a very good business model if you're just deriving revenue from one floor of 3 floors. So you need to build it out all the way up and really make that work well.
Well, I've got one final question for you before we wrap up because of time, but I'd be interested to know that certainly not through this process, it's a long process, but what do you envision the future of Newark? What do you see Newark looking like?
Well, I think we've got the ball rolling well. We want to have a vibrant downtown. I will say we are I call it an extended suburb of Columbus, and I won't say that surely helps us in many ways. 40 years ago, it was a liability. Don't shop in Columbus. Today, it's, if we don't have it here, you can run there. There's jobs there if you do want to commute. We have to understand that's the way it is. And with the highways, I'm not going to try and compete necessarily, but we're probably, 30 to 45 minutes from Columbus, so it does offer some amenities as a remote area. We expect to have a vibrant downtown and have lofts going and buildings looking great. And what I really say at the end of the day, I want somebody to drive through from out of town and say, look at their husband or wife and say, this looks like a great town. We'd love to have a business here, or we'd love to live here. And that's what we really want. It's important when I go to other towns, when you're in your own town, you look at your negatives. And when you're in other towns, you just look at the positives. Well, look between those. You're not unique in those negatives. When you go in other towns, you're kind of the wow factor. Ooh, look at that, look at that. You only look at those neat things. You don't look at the negatives. Maybe the houses in between that are falling down, but it's the same everywhere. So, we're all working together to achieve this, and so just a good community is what we want.
Wonderful. Well, Mayor Hall, I cannot thank you enough for taking part in this today, to sharing with our audience what steps you've taken here, what your sort of vision is for the future of Newark, and as you've offered before, anybody that wants to reach out and kind of learn more about what you're doing, it sounds like you all are welcome to those, field some of those questions, and certainly at Heritage Ohio we are as well.
Absolutely, and again, thank you very much, and we love sharing the story, and we surely appreciate what Heritage Ohio does in Ohio and leads in the direction with that information and collaboration efforts.
Right, sir. I want to thank everyone for attending the webinar today. Our next webinar will be on March 11th with Delilah Onofre, and we'll be talking about American Bloom. For our calendar of upcoming events, including our future webinars, please visit us at heritageohio.org. Thanks very much.